Okay, we're going to reconvene our regular council meeting and we will open up the public hearing. I declare the public hearing regarding proposed bylaw 1997-21 be opened at 1300 hours. I'll ask the manager of planning and engineering to explain the purpose of the hearing. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the purpose of this hearing is to satisfy section 674 of the MGA, which requires that a public hearing be held for removal of municipal reserve designation. In this particular case, council approved the disposition of this 1.3 acre portion at the February 4th council meeting. So before the land can be sold, the MR needs to be properly removed, which includes this public hearing.
Has notice of this hearing been provided in accordance with the applicable legislation and the bylaws of the city of Wetaskiwin?
It has, yeah. Our minimum requirement is to advertise on the city website as of February 18th. And it was posted within that timeline. Additionally, we advertised on the city Facebook and Twitter pages.
I'd like to ask that Development Services provide the report regarding this matter.
So in this case, this arises from the disposition of this particular lands, which is 1.3 acres within Plan 872, 1715, Block 9, Lots 27 MR. So this is Kinsman Park, as it's known. So the total park space is 9.81 acres. The land that is in question right now is just 1.3 acres of that. And that 1.3 acres includes the existing building, which was built originally as a Kinsman Hall and is now owned by a church group that uses it. So it's been there since 1991. The land also includes the parking lot that's associated with that building. And so the land is currently leased. The building is owned privately. And so the land it's on has been leased since that 1991. And so as part of that lease, the lease included a clause that it would be reviewed every 5 years. And as during the last 5-year updates, the city determined that it would be financially the most optimal if we could just sell that land instead. The site and building are not particularly valuable to the city, considering they're already developed. The building itself isn't a publicly available building. And so sale of the site wouldn't represent a change from the current uses that are allowed. It's currently zoned urban service, which includes particularly, or that zone allows for mostly city services, and then also allows for church uses, which is why the church is allowed there. That zoning won't change, even if this reserve designation is removed. So really, functionally, there won't be any change to this particular piece of land. It will just be that the city would get a chunk of money that would be put towards the land or the park reserve. It would be used for other park uses and could be used in other areas throughout the city. The parking lots, if this is approved and the sale is pursued, we would include as a condition of the sale that the parking lot would have to remain accessible to the public and to city staff so that maintenance could happen as it does now. I believe that is it for my report.
Good. Have we received any written submissions?
We have not received any written submissions, no.
Okay. I'll now call upon anyone who wishes to speak directly to council on this matter. First, we'll call upon those who have registered prior to the meeting, and anyone else who wishes to speak may have the opportunity.
I do have one registered, Mr. Randy Richards.
Good. Welcome, Randy. We'll have you up to the mic, please.
My glasses got to come off and I can't read. The original subdivision to this quarter section was in 1976. The subdivision authority was Battle River Regional Planning Commission at the time, who was a board that the city was represented on. The Planning Act of the day required the developer provide 10% of the land within the quarter section as municipal reserve, or about 16 acres for that quarter section. That land was to be used for parks and schools or green space. If it was not provided at the time, the first subdivision was at the first time of subdivision, they were supposed to have a deferred reserve caveat on the remainder of the quarter. After, so in 1987, it was not provided. In 1987, a second subdivision was done and the deferred reserve caveat wanted to come off by the developer, Mr. Arthur A. Voice. After the go-ahead was granted for the hospital, that neighborhood was developed rather quickly because there was a lot of interest in the north end of the city for families to move into the area. The developer was required to provide 16 acres within that quarter section in the 1987 subdivision. Some of it is provided around berms, other portions, the remainder of it was put into that park for the entire quarter section, all the way over to the Lions Campground. The city engineer of the day, Mr. Bert Anman, and recreation manager and the recreation board led by Bob Mindio on their internal committees wanted all of the land, that parkland, to be put in the center of the subdivision. So it could be reached within 400 meters of every corner of the subdivision. So you wouldn't need lots of mini parks everywhere. Just trying to read my notes here. I wrote it up rather quickly. The city was in keen interest, had keen interest from the Kinsman Club of the day to assist in the development of the park. The developer representative would work with the Kinsman Club and the rec manager to work out the details of the park design. The city had some desire for baseball facilities, outdoor hockey, rinks, tennis courts, etc. The consultant was hired who was involved with the Olympic Games at the time in 1988. Mr. Wally Brose was the club representative from the Kinsman Club, and we worked back and forth with him in the day. The developer representative was Mr. Burke Perry. Being a smart business person, consulted the many builders in the area and all the new homeowners that were coming into the area what they would like to see in that park. We went back and forth for over 9 months to get a park design that was satisfactory to everyone. As I was a builder and the new resident in the day, I was asked to be the committee liaison to collect and negotiate the park design. The first official notice I seen on this was in the paper I received on Thursday. The addresses of the homes around the park are not there. Many of the people that live in that park bought their homes there in that day because that park was there and was going to be 10 acres in size. The park design went back and forth and we finally reached consensus. The Kinsman Hall was moved from the north end of the park to the south end of the park. The baseball diamonds were not going to be an Olympic park. They turned into a neighborhood baseball diamond at the time. The Kinsman Park was moved to the south end of the park to be more appropriately placed on the park next to a major roadway, which would be North Mount Drive. The Kinsman would be allowed to build their facility on the site, and the city would retain ownership of the lands to ensure it remained a public space for eternity. Although there was a great intent that service clubs would continue to prosper, and additions would be made to the park to meet all the original design. The Kinsman and Kinsman clubs eventually shrank and were forced to reduce their expenses and finally sold their facility off. The Kinsman, the K clubs made an agreement to transfer the ownership of the present religious to the present religious assembly building, who continue to lease the space within the park. They desire to purchase the land under the building, and parking lot. And just a note on that. Yesterday, there were 17 cars at that park with kids tobogganing and everything from all over the city. And that parking lot was well used by the community, not just by our neighborhood. A few of the things I talked about, here's the original design documents, letters from the Olympic consultant. Here's a letter that Burke Perry of the day, the developer of the day, gave to every resident in the neighborhood to allow us input on the design of the park. And we went over that quite adamantly, that the Kinsman Club would not own the land. It would be held as a park in eternity. The letters we wrote to the Kinsman, which I have my copy of that I wrote, and to the consultant, that the baseball park was supposed to be a community baseball diamond, not a well lit up park. It was supposed to have walkways throughout the park with security lighting from all corners of the park. There'd be benches around the park, around the clubhouse, no permanent bleacher facilities. So again, this is from March 4th, 1991. So today, I am now 35 years older, or 34. The neighborhood, many of the people that live in that neighborhood now are seniors that have lived there their whole time. There's now 19 kids moved into that neighborhood. Then a few years ago, there was only 6. The reason they're come to that neighborhood is because of the excellent Kinsman Park and the facility that's there. There's also an area structure plan that for that neighborhood that's in your files, file 154702 is the area structure plan for that. That park was going to be added to, not shrunken. There's land set aside in the subdivision of the remaining deferred reserve caveat that land would be purchased at a later date for the purpose of a school and additional park space. So with that in mind, we're not opposed to the land being disposed of to the other facilities, to the owner of the other facilities, but we would like probably a 1-year lease on their 1-year extension on their lease. And then the neighborhood, which you guys have received letters from regarding skating facilities, lighting, everything like that, from neighbors. And there's a lot of people in that neighborhood that walk through that park that want trails and whatnot in that park. If this funding would go to that stuff, the residents would not be opposed to it, but we would like a good period of time to discuss all these issues rather than just have it put it on a website and in a paper one day before the meeting. Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to be heard? Anyone online? Okay. Anyone else wishing to be heard? Third and final, anyone else wishing to be heard? I'd like to thank Randy for his presentation on the hearing. Council will discuss and debate this matter later in the agenda. I declare this public hearing closed at 13:13. Moving along to item 16B, removal of municipal reserve designation, 1.3 acres, portion of plan 8721715, block 9, lot 27, municipal reserve.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. So this is now the decision portion of this matter. After the public hearing, council now can make a motion to actually remove the MR designation. So my report, I guess I will quickly summarize for the record. This land is 1.3 acres of the total 9.81 acres of the park space. There's currently a privately owned building on it and also a parking lot. The site currently is not a valuable asset to the city, and the sale, in administration's opinion, would represent a better, would be better value for the value of the land. The money would be held in the park reserve and would be used for park uses, either to improve services at this park or at others around the city. The parking lot itself, we would ensure that access would remain to the public and to city staff as a condition of the sale. I believe those are all of the details. Now, if Actually, I should state that council's options are to approve the removal. Alternatively, council could not approve the removal, in which case the sale would not proceed. I think that is all I have, and I'm happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Councillor Billingsley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question is more of clarification. If a motion is passed to change the designation, does that automatically trigger it going up for sale, or is that going to have to come as another motion to deem it as surplus property and put the property up for sale?
Through the chair, the motion was February 14th. That was the initial step to dispose of the land.
So
And now
if this
is-
passes, then it's up for sale.
Not necessarily, like the sale hasn't actually been initiated. Council has just approved that the land could be posted for sale. And then this is the procedural step that says it's not reserve anymore.
Okay, so then the next step would be what, as far as our decision-making goes? Any? Or is that all on administration?
Correct, yeah, then it would be administrative. We would follow through with a subdivision to create a separate title for the land, and then it could be posted for sale.
Thank you.
Councillor Nielsen.
Thank you. Through the chair, either to Andrew or Sue. Anticipated value of that asset in terms of a sale would be what?
Through the chair, the appraisal report came in at 300,000.
About 300,000.
Yeah.
And you talked about it going into reserves for the purposes of,
Yeah, the uses are specified in the MGA, so any money that comes in from the sale of reserve land has to be used for park space as a buffer zone between uses or for school land uses.
and so when we talk about public parks of which this would be one, is there any stipulations with regard to, is that the acquisition of land for a public park? Or could those funds be used to improve the amenities within the existing remaining portions of that park?
Through the chair, as I understand, it's only for acquisition of land. I don't know, Sue, do you have a different?
Got that. So it's actually a legislative reserve. When you sell municipal reserve lands or school reserve lands, it's a legislative reserve. And the city's reserve is the community land reserve. And the purpose is to provide funds for the purchase and or development of recreational lands and facilities, restricted by the Municipal Government Act, as Andrew has said, to be used for public parks or public recreation purposes. Use of funds is recommended by administration in the annual budget process and approved by council. So that's essentially what the
So
funds
could
are.
that be interpreted that in the development of an existing park, it could be used for benches, lighting, other amenities in the park?
No, because I don't believe a bench would be considered a facility. So it's either for the recreational land, the land itself, or facility. So something like the Maniluk Center or something to that effect. But a bench is not a facility per se. You'd be really stretching the definition there.
Wouldn't that then be an upgrade to the park?
Depends what the upgrade entails.
A bench.
A path,
No,
a
no.
pathway.
no. Development of recreational lands and facilities. So if you have a piece of land, I imagine you could develop a trail on that land. And by extension, a bench on the trail, possibly. We'd have to get clarification on that.
Yeah, I guess for me, I think it would be important that we truly understand what the limitations are, because the presenter talked about the community not being in opposition to this if the kinds of things that they were first promised could actually be accommodated on some level. And I'm not suggesting we race out and spend $300,000, but at least some level of consideration, I guess. So I'd like to see us if we could get further information out as we move forward. Thank you.
Counselor Elliott?
I actually put it on the computer this time, and it,
Oh, nice, sir.
from the mayor through to Andrew. Number one, is there a rush on selling this?
Through the mayor, not as far as I know. Finance might have a different answer, but I'm not sure if there are deadlines or anything. As far as I know, there isn't.
So there's, okay. One of the concerns is the money should be for their park because this land was allocated to that subdivision. And that's one of their concerns. And the other way is that they feel they haven't been heard. They didn't feel they got enough notification. So I'm wondering if there really is no rush on this, why can't we put it off for 6 months or something? Make sure the community is informed and has a chance to give us some feedback rather than just moving ahead. They felt that they had no previous knowledge of what was happening till they saw it in the paper. And that's not just from Randy, that's from other people who live in that area as well. So, Mr. Mayor, I don't know if there's not a rush. I'd like to see us just table it or just receive it for information right now. I guess we can't receive it for information. We've already.
A motion on the floor, so if you move to table it, we can do that. We're gonna at least call for
All right, Mr. Mayor, I would move that we table this for a 6-month period to ensure that the community surrounding the park is apprised of what is going on and has a chance to offer their feedback. Thank you.
Through the chair to Councillor Elliott, can we not put a time limit on it and just until public consultation is completed? Because we can certainly do it quicker than 6 months, and we are not asking the church for the lease payment for this year. So I'd like to see that wrapped up sooner than later, whichever direction we go.
Okay, so how long would public consultation take?
If we could just say until public consultation is completed,
No, but how is that determined?
we'll go out and do it, and then we'll report back to council when it's done.
I would allow that friendly amendment. So until such time as the community has had a chance to share their input and then bring it back to council.
I don't know if procedurally we need an actual date to it. No? Okay. Okay. Those in favor? There's no speaking to a tabling motion. Carried. Councilor Nelson.
Is there a time limit on the motion we passed? And I don't mean the one we just passed.
2
but the one-
years,
2 years?
2 years,
Okay, thank you.
in terms of deeming it surplus.
Yeah.
But yes, yeah, 2 years.
Okay, thank you.
That's it. For a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councilor Black. Those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you.